In March 1965, a graduate student at MIT disappeared from a locked laboratory on the third floor of Building 26. The door was secured from the inside. The windows were sealed shut for climate control. When campus security forced entry 14 hours after he was last seen, Arnold Yashing was not inside. His experiment was still running. His coffee was still warm. The room contained no exit he could have used. Arnold Yashing was 24 years old, a second-year doctoral candidate in theoretical physics. His undergraduate work at City College of New York had focused on quantum field theory. His advisor at MIT was Professor Jonathan Reichman, who described Arnold as methodical, introverted, and unusually precise in his experimental documentation. Arnold had no history of mental health incidents, no disciplinary issues, no pattern of erratic behavior. He showed up. He did the work. He didn't generate problems. Arnold's research involved electromagnetic field manipulation using a custom-built apparatus that combined high-voltage capacitors with precision-timed magnetic coils. The goal was to test theoretical predictions about field coherence at extremely short timescales. Standard graduate-level physics research. Equipment worth approximately $12,000. Nothing classified. Nothing exotic. The kind of experiment conducted in dozens of university labs across the country. On March 18, 1965, Arnold signed into Building 26 at 6:47 p.m., according to the security log. He was carrying his standard research kit, a leather satchel containing notebooks, slide rules, and measurement tools. The night guard, William Tompkins, remembered the interaction because Arnold mentioned he would be running an extended test sequence and requested no interruptions. Tompkins noted this in his shift report. Protocol was followed. Arnold proceeded to Laboratory 314, his assigned workspace. The lab was a rectangular room, approximately 20 feet by 15 feet, with a single reinforced door and two windows that had been permanently sealed during HVAC modifications in 1962. The door featured a deadbolt that could only be engaged from inside. Standard security for sensitive equipment. At 11:20 p.m., a graduate student working in Laboratory 309, 2 doors down the hall, reported hearing a low-frequency hum emanating from Arnold's lab. The sound lasted approximately 30 seconds, then stopped. The student, Robert Chun, documented this in his own research notes because the frequency interfered with his oscilloscope readings. He did not investigate further. Odd sounds from neighboring labs were routine in Building 26. At 8 a.m. on March 19th, Professor Reichman arrived for a scheduled meeting with Arnold. The laboratory door was closed. Reichman knocked. No response. He knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Reichman tried the handle. The door was locked from inside. He could see through the small window in the door that the laboratory lights were on and equipment was running, but Arnold was not visible. Reichman returned to his office and called campus security. 2 officers responded at 8:35 a.m., Tompkins from the night shift and Officer David Morse from day shift. They confirmed the door was secured from the interior. Morse shouted Arnold's name multiple times. No response. No movement visible through the door window. The humming of electrical equipment was audible from the hallway. At 8:47 a.m., following standard protocol for potential medical emergency, security forced entry using a maintenance master key and crowbar to disengage the internal deadbolt. The door opens inward. When they push it open, the deadbolt is still engaged. They have to break the bolt housing to enter. This becomes important later. The laboratory is empty. Arnold is not inside. His apparatus is running, drawing power, generating a stable electromagnetic field. His notebook is open on the workbench, displaying equations and time-stamped observations. The last entry reads 2319, field coherence stable at 847 microseconds. Extending duration, His coffee mug sits beside the notebook. Morse touches it during the initial sweep. He later testifies it was still warm, not hot, but warmer than room temperature. Here's what makes the scenario impossible. The door was locked from inside with the deadbolt engaged until security broke it. The windows cannot open. They were sealed with industrial caulking in 1962 and painted over. Examination confirms no tampering. The laboratory has no secondary exits, no ceiling access panels, no floor hatches. Building 26 was constructed in 1957 with poured concrete floors and ceilings. There are no crawl spaces. Campus security contacted Cambridge Police at 9:15 a.m. Detective Frank Holloway responded and conducted a formal investigation. His report, filed March 22, 1965, documents the physical impossibility. Holloway personally inspected every surface of Laboratory 314. He tested the windows. He examined the ductwork, which was too narrow for human passage, and secured with screws that showed no recent disturbance. He checked the walls for hidden panels. Nothing. Holloway interviewed everyone who had access to Building 26 on March 18th. The security log showed 11 people signed in that evening. All 11 were accounted for and had verifiable locations throughout the night. Robert Chun, working in Lab 309, confirmed he heard the humming at 11:20 p.m., but saw no one enter or leave Arnold's lab. The hallway has only one entrance from the stairwell, and Chun had a direct sight line to it from his workbench. Arnold's apartment was searched on March 20th. His belongings were undisturbed. His car was still parked in the graduate student lot. His bank account showed no unusual activity. His family in Brooklyn had not heard from him. His girlfriend, Lisa Brenner, a graduate student in chemistry, reported their last conversation was March 17th. Arnold mentioned his experiment was entering a critical phase, and he might be unavailable for a few days. Nothing unusual in that context. The FBI entered the investigation on March 25th at MIT's request, primarily due to the Cold War context and concerns about potential defection or kidnapping. Special Agent Thomas Garrett led the inquiry. His classified report, partially declassified in 1998, reveals additional details that were not public knowledge in 1965. Arnold's experimental apparatus was examined by FBI technical specialists and MIT faculty. The device had been running continuously from the time Arnold activated it until security shut it down at approximately 10:30 a.m. on March 19th. Total runtime, 14 hours and 11 minutes. The equipment logs, which Arnold had designed to record automatically, showed normal operation throughout this period. Field strength consistent. Power draw stable. No anomalies detected. Except one. At 23 hours 19 minutes and 34 seconds, the precise timestamp of Arnold's final notebook entry, the equipment registered a 0.7 microsecond dropout in the electromagnetic field. The dropout was so brief, it would have been meaningless in most experimental contexts. But Arnold's entire research focused on microsecond scale field behavior. He would have noticed it. The dropout. Agent Garrett's report notes that Arnold's research involved creating extremely localized regions of high electromagnetic field density. Theoretical physics in 1965 was beginning to explore concepts that would later inform unified field theories, though the mathematics was still developmental. Arnold's notebook contained equations that several consulting physicists described as advanced beyond his expected level and potentially derivative of classified research. This becomes relevant because of what happened next. On April 3, 1965, 2 weeks after Arnold's disappearance, the Department of Defense contacted MIT and requested all materials related to Arnold's research. The equipment, the notebooks, the data logs, everything. MIT initially resisted, citing academic freedom. The DoD presented a national security classification order. MIT complied on April 8th. Arnold's laboratory was emptied. The apparatus was crated and shipped to an undisclosed location. His notebooks were confiscated. Professor Reichman was instructed not to discuss the research. The FBI investigation was officially closed on April 10th with a status of missing person, no evidence of foul play, case suspended pending new information. No new information ever emerged. The official MIT position, communicated to Arnold's family and the media, was that Arnold had experienced some form of psychological crisis and left voluntarily through means that were unclear but not impossible. Perhaps he climbed into the ductwork despite its narrow dimensions. Perhaps the door was not actually locked. Perhaps security misremembered. The university declined to elaborate. Arnold's family hired a private investigator in June 1965. The investigator, Marcus Webb, was a former Boston police detective with 20 years of experience. His report, completed in August, concluded that Arnold could not have left Laboratory 314 through any conventional means. Webb replicated the locked room scenario, tested the ductwork dimensions, examined building blueprints, and interviewed witnesses independently. His conclusion matched Detective Holloway's. The physical evidence described an impossibility. Webb's report included one additional detail. He interviewed a janitor, Harold Sims, who worked the overnight shift in Building 26, but was not initially questioned by police. Sims reported that around midnight on March 18th to 19th, he was cleaning the second-floor hallway when he heard a sound he described as like a transformer blowing, but quieter, more like a deep thump that you feel in your chest. The sound came from above him, third floor, where Laboratory 314 was located. Sims checked his watch out of habit. 11:58 p.m. He did not investigate because electrical sounds were common in the building. This timestamp is 38 minutes after Arnold's final notebook entry. It does not align with Robert Schun's reported hum at 11:20 p.m. It represents a third anomalous event on a timeline that has no witnesses and no explanation. The declassified FBI documents from 1998 contain an internal memo dated April 1965, written by Agent Garrett to his section chief. The memo states, "Subject's research into localized field manipulation shares theoretical overlap with classified programs. Recommend immediate seizure of materials and closure of civilian investigation. Subject's location remains unknown. Equipment examination shows no evidence of malfunction or sabotage. Possibility of voluntary departure cannot be supported by evidence. Alternative scenarios remain unexplained." The memo does not specify what alternative scenarios means. Garrett retired from the FBI in 1982. He declined all interview requests about the Yeshin case until his removal from operational status in 2004. His personal papers, donated to a university archive, contain no additional information about Arnold. MIT's Building 26 was renovated in 1978. Laboratory 314 was reconfigured into office space. The sealed windows were replaced with modern units. The original door with the broken deadbolt housing was removed during construction. No documentation exists regarding its disposal. The current occupants of that office space have no knowledge of the 1965 incident. Arnold Yeshun was declared legally deceased in 1972 at his family's request, 7 years after his disappearance. No body was ever recovered. No evidence of his continued existence ever surfaced. He is listed in MIT's records as a doctoral candidate who did not complete his degree. His research topic is noted as electromagnetic field studies, with no elaboration. Here's what we know for certain. Arnold entered a locked laboratory on March 18, 1965, at 6:47 p.m. He was alone. He activated an electromagnetic field apparatus designed to manipulate coherence at microsecond timescales. At 11:19 p.m., he documented stable field behavior and decided to extend the experiment duration. At 11:20 p.m., a neighboring researcher heard a low-frequency hum. At some point before 8 a.m. on March 19th, Arnold ceased to be present in the laboratory. The door remained locked from inside. The room had no other exit. Here's what the evidence cannot explain: how Arnold left a room with no exits, why his experiment logged a microsecond scale anomaly at the exact timestamp of his final written words, why the Department of Defense classified his research 2 weeks after his disappearance, why multiple witnesses reported sounds that don't align with known events, what happened during the 38 minutes between his last notebook entry and the janitor's reported thump. The current Department of Defense position, when asked, is that Arnold Yeshin's research materials remain classified for reasons of national security. No timeline for declassification has been provided. The specific nature of the classification has never been explained. Arnold's younger sister, Rachel Yeshin Baum, is now 78 years old. She has spent 59 years requesting information about her brother's disappearance. She has filed 17 Freedom of Information Act requests. 14 were denied in full. 3 were partially granted, releasing documents already in the public record. She has never received an explanation for why a graduate student's physics experiment warranted permanent classification. In 2019, a retired MIT physics professor, Dr. Ellen Cortez, published a paper examining the theoretical implications of Arnold's documented research based on the limited information available in the classified FBI files. Her analysis suggested that Arnold may have been attempting to create what would later be called a quantum coherent state in a macroscopic electromagnetic system, decades before such concepts entered mainstream physics. Cortez's paper includes this passage: if Yeshin achieved even momentary coherence at the scale his notes suggest, the energy densities involved would have created localized space-time effects that 1965 instrumentation could not measure. We have no framework for understanding what happens to matter inside such a field. We still don't. The paper received minimal attention in academic circles. Cortez retired 6 months after publication. She has declined to expand on her hypothesis. Arnold Yeshin's experimental apparatus has never been located in any DoD inventory. The notebooks have never been declassified. The laboratory where he disappeared no longer exists in its original configuration. The people who witnessed the immediate aftermath are either removed from operational status or unavailable for comment. The locked room remains locked. The question of what Arnold discovered in the 38 minutes after his final documented observation remains unanswered. Whether he left the room through an exit that conventional physics cannot describe, or whether he became part of the experiment itself, is not part of the official record. MIT's current position, when asked about the incident, is that it was a tragic disappearance with no satisfactory resolution. The university maintains no special restrictions on research in the area of electromagnetic field manipulation. Students and faculty continue to conduct experiments that explore the boundaries of field theory and quantum coherence. Whether any of those experiments have produced microsecond dropouts followed by disappearances, and whether such incidents would be reported or classified, is not information the university makes public.